The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the emergency room. The smell of antiseptic mixed with blood. It was just another Thursday night at County General Hospital. Sarah Mitchell moved quietly between patients. Her scrubs were plain blue, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Nothing about her stood out, Nurse Mitchell. "We need vitals on bed 7, Dr. Harrison barked, without looking up from his clipboard. "Right away." "Doctor," she said softly. She had worked here for 6 months. The other nurses liked her. She was reliable, calm under pressure. But invisible to the doctors? Dr. Harrison treated her like furniture. Dr. Chen barely remembered her name. The hospital administrator had walked past her in the hallway yesterday without a glance. Sarah didn't mind. Invisible was exactly what she needed to be. She checked the patient's blood pressure. Her hands moved with practiced precision. The elderly man smiled weakly at her. "You're going to be fine, Mr. Peterson," she whispered. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A single word flashed on the encrypted screen. "Stand by." Her expression never changed. She slipped the phone back and continued her rounds. If you want to discover more incredible stories of hidden heroes, subscribe now. You never know who might be standing right next to you. The night shift crawled forward. A drunk driver victim, a child with pneumonia, a heart attack. Dr. Harrison snapped his fingers at Sarah. "Offie. 2 sugars, of course, doctor." She returned 5 minutes later with his coffee. He took it without thanks. Without even looking at her face, in the break room, 2 other nurses whispered over their phones. "Did you see the news?" Jennifer asked. "Some kind of terrorist threat downtown." "FBI everywhere," Scary Maria replied. "I'm glad we're safe here." Sarah listened while reorganizing the supply cabinet. Her face remained neutral, but her mind was already calculating. Distance to downtown. Probable targets. Extraction routes. The alert on her phone changed, elevated. She returned to the floor. The ER had quieted down. Only 3 patients remained. Dr. Harrison was explaining something to a resident with exaggerated hand gestures. Showing off. "The key to emergency medicine," he announced loudly, "is never panicking. Unlike some of our nursing staff who crumble under real pressure." He glanced at Sarah as he said it. She simply nodded. "Yes, doctor." The resident SMIR, KED. Sarah had seen combat in 3 countries. She had disarmed bombs, negotiated hostage releases, led teams through hostile territory. But tonight, she was just a nurse. At 11:47 p.m., the doors burst open. 3 men in tactical gear stormed in. Black uniforms. Weapons drawn. Nobody moves. The lead man shouted. Patients screamed. The resident ducked behind a desk. Jennifer dropped a tray of instruments with a crash. Dr. Harrison's face went white. "What? What is this?" "Shut up," the gunman growled. "Everyone against the wall. Now." The second gunman grabbed Dr. Chen by the arm, shoving him toward the wall. Sarah moved slowly with the others. Her heart rate stayed steady. Her breathing controlled. She counted them. 3 visible, probably 2 more outside. Standard assault formation. The lead gunman paced in front of them. "One of you is going to help us. A patient is coming. You're going to save him. No questions." "No cops." Dr. Harrison's voice shook. "We can't just—" The gunman pressed his weapon to Harrison's forehead. "You'll do exactly what I say." Harrison's knees buckled. Sarah watched, waited. Her encrypted phone was buzzing, continuously now against her hip. The alert had changed. Again, active, she took a slow breath. The mission parameters had just shifted, and Dr. Harrison had no idea that the small neat does. Quiet nurse standing 3 feet away was about to change everything. The gunman's radio crackled. 2 minutes out? Sarah's mind processed everything. The weapons were military grade. The coordination was professional. This wasn't a random attack. The lead gunman pointed at Dr. Harrison. "You're the head doctor here." Harrison nodded frantically. Sweat dripped down his temples. "Good. You're going to perform surgery?" No questions asked. I need my team, Harrison stammered. Anesthesiologist. Surgical nurses. I can't. You have nurses right here. The gunman gestured at Sarah, Jennifer, and Maria. Jennifer was crying silently. Maria's hands trembled. Sarah remained still, watching every tactical detail. Filed away in her mind. The ER doors opened again. 2 more men entered, carrying a stretcher. A man lay unconscious, bleeding heavily from his abdomen. Gunshot wound, one of the carriers said. 40 minutes ago. He's priority. Dr. Harrison stared at the patient. He needs a hospital. A real trauma center. We're not equipped. The lead gunman struck Harrison across the face with the back of his hand. Harrison fell to his knees. You're equipped enough, the gunman said coldly. Fix him, or everyone dies. Sarah's phone buzzed again. She glanced down for a fraction of a second. Position compromised. Enemy knows. Your location. Hold until extraction. Her jaw tightened. They weren't after the hospital randomly. They knew she was here, the gunman ordered. Operating room. Now. Dr. Chen spoke up, his voice thin. Please. We have families. We'll help. Just don't hurt anyone, then do what you're told. They were herded down the hallway. Sarah walked between Jennifer and Maria, both nurses shaking with fear. It's going to be okay, Sarah whispered. How can you be so calm? Jennifer hissed. Sarah didn't answer. The operating room felt smaller, with 5 gunmen inside. The overhead lights reflected off surgical instruments. The smell of disinfectant was overwhelming. Get him on the table, the lead gunman ordered. Harrison and Chen struggled to transfer the patient. Their hands were shaking too badly. Sarah stepped forward. Let me. The gunman studied her for a moment. She met his eyes. Steady. Unflinching. Fine. Help them. Sarah moved with efficient precision. She lifted the patient with proper form, positioning him perfectly on the table. Her movements were clinical, professional, too professional. The lead gunman's eyes narrowed slightly. But he said nothing. Jennifer, prep the anesthesia, Harrison ordered, trying to regain some control. Jennifer couldn't stop shaking. She dropped the mask twice. I can't, Jennifer sobbed. I can't do this. One of the gunmen stepped toward her. Then you're useless. I'll do it, Sarah said quietly. She moved to the anesthesia station. Her hands were perfectly steady. She checked the dosages, adjusted the flow rates, connected the monitoring equipment. Dr. Harrison stared at her. How do you... I've assisted before, Sarah said simply. It was true. Just not in any hospital Harrison would recognize. Field hospitals. Combat zones. Places where supplies were scarce and death was close. The patient's vitals appeared on the monitor. Weak, but stable enough for surgery. Cut him open, the lead gunman ordered. Dr. Harrison picked up the scalpel. His hand trembled so violently he nearly dropped it. Can't, Harrison whispered. I can't work like this. The gunman pressed his weapon against Maria's head. Then watch her die, Maria screamed. Harrison tried again. The scalpel hovered over the patient's abdomen, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. 30 seconds passed. A minute. The lead gunman cocked his weapon. Stop, Sarah said. Everyone turned to look at her. She stepped forward, calm, controlled. Let me. You're a nurse, the gunman said. I'm trained for trauma surgery, Sarah replied. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth, the gunman considered. Then nodded. Do it fast. Sarah took the scalpel from Harrison's trembling hand. She looked down at the patient, and in that moment, something shifted in her eyes. The meek, invisible nurse disappeared. Someone else emerged. Her first incision was perfect, confident, precise. Dr. Harrison's mouth fell open. That's a military technique. Sarah didn't respond. She worked quickly. Clamping bleeders, navigating around vital organs, her hands moved with the precision of someone who had done this 100 times, in war zones. Under fire, While explosions rocked the walls, the lead gunman stepped closer. Watching her carefully, "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Sarah didn't look up. "I'm a nurse." "No," he said. "You're not." Outside, in the distance, the sound of sirens began to grow louder. The gunman's radio crackled. "We have company. Local PD, establishing perimeter." The lead gunman cursed. He grabbed Sarah by the shoulder, pulling her back from the table. "You called them?" he accused. "I've been right here," Sarah said calmly. "Search her." Rough hands patted her down. They found her phone. The encrypted screen was dark now. The gunman smashed it against the floor. "Lock this place down," he ordered his team. "Nobody in, nobody out." 2 gunmen ran to secure the doors. Sarah returned to the patient. She had maybe 15 minutes before he'd bleed out. "Keep working," the lead gunman said. "But know this. You try anything, and everyone dies." Sarah's hands never stopped moving, but her mind was calculating, counting, planning outside. She could hear vehicles arriving. Heavy boots on pavement. The siege had begun, and Sarah Mitchell, invisible nurse, was about to become very visible indeed. Sarah's hands moved inside the patient's abdomen. 30 years old, maybe? Tattoos on his arms. Military ink, mixed with gang symbols. "Bullet fragmented," she said. "Pierced the small intestine. I need to resect and repair." The lead gunman leaned over her shoulder. "How long?" 20 minutes. "If you let me work?" He stepped back. His radio crackled constantly now. "Reports coming in, police. SWAT, news helicopters overhead." Dr. Harrison stood frozen against the wall. Dr. Chen was crying silently. Jennifer had collapsed in the corner. Maria was praying under her breath. Sarah worked, suturing, clamping. Her movements were mechanical. Perfect. "Where did you learn this?" Dr. Harrison whispered. Sarah didn't answer. A voice boomed through a megaphone from outside. "This is the police. The building is surrounded. Release the hostages." One of the gunmen swore. "They're setting up sniper positions." The lead gunman's face hardened. "Then we use our leverage." "Bring me a hostage," he pointed at Jennifer. 2 gunmen grabbed her arms. Jennifer screamed. They dragged her toward the door. "Wait," Sarah said quietly. Everyone stopped. Sarah didn't look up from the surgery. Her voice remained calm, professional. "You take her out there, and they'll have visual confirmation of hostages. SWAT will be authorized to breach. You'll all be dead in 3 minutes." The lead gunman stared at her. "What did you say?" "Standard law enforcement protocol," Sarah replied. She tied off a blood vessel. "Hostage in immediate danger equals green light for tactical entry." The silence in the room was thick. "How does a nurse know that?" the gunman asked slowly. Sarah finally looked up. Her eyes met his. "I read." The tension crackled like electricity. The gunman released Jennifer. She collapsed back into the corner, sobbing. "You're not just a nurse," he said. Sarah returned to her work. "I'm trying to save your friend's life." "No." He grabbed her wrist. "You're something else." His radio crackled again. "Boss, we got feds outside now. FBI tactical team just arrived." The gunman's grip tightened on Sarah's wrist. "FBI, not just local cops." "Why would the FBI respond this fast?" Sarah's expression never changed. "Maybe your patient is important, or maybe you are." He yanked her back from the table. The patient's vitals immediately began dropping. Alarms beeped. "He's bleeding out," Sarah said calmly. "You have about 4 minutes before he's dead." The gunman's weapon pressed against her temple. "Who are you?" "Sarah Mitchell. Registered nurse. License number 847,392. "Liar." Maria suddenly spoke up, her voice shaking. "She's telling the truth. I've worked with her for months. She's just a nurse who performs field surgery like a combat medic," the gunman said. "A nurse who knows federal tactical protocols." Dr. Harrison found his voice. She's always been odd." keeps to herself, but she's just a nurse. The patient's monitor alarm grew louder. Sarah spoke quietly. Your friend is dying. You can interrogate me, or you can let me save him. Choose. The gunman's jaw clenched. He released her, shoved her toward the table. Finish it. Then we talk. Sarah resumed working, but something had shifted. Everyone in the room was looking at her differently now. Outside, a voice boomed through the megaphone again. We have a negotiator on site. Pick up the phone inside. Let's talk. One of the gunmen brought a phone from the nurse's station. He handed it to the leader. The leader answered. Who is this? A calm male voice responded. Special Agent Marcus Webb, FBI. Let's work this out. Nobody else needs to get hurt. We have hostages, the lead gunman said. Doctors, nurses, you breach, they die. We don't want that, Agent Webb said. Let's start with the wounded. Let the patients go. No, let one hostage go. Good faith. The gunman looked around the room. His eyes landed on Dr. Chen. Fine. One. He gestured to his men. They grabbed Dr. Chen and dragged him to the door. Sarah kept working. But she was listening, analyzing. The FBI negotiator's voice had a specific cadence. Trained, professional. But underneath, it was something else. Urgency. They weren't here for the gunman. They were here for something else. Or someone else. Dr. Chen was pushed out the front door. Sarah heard shouting outside. Tactical teams securing him. The lead gunman returned to the operating room. Your turn, nurse. Time to tell me the truth. Sarah tied off the final suture. Patient is stable. He'll live good. Now talk. Sarah pulled off her bloody gloves. She met his eyes steadily. What do you want to know? Start with why the FBI showed up in force. For a simple hospital hostage situation, maybe they take all hostage situations seriously. The gunman shook his head. We planned this for weeks. We knew the response times. Local PD, sure. But FBI tactical in under 30 minutes? That's not protocol. He stepped closer. Unless they were already nearby. Already watching. Already tracking someone. Sarah said nothing. It's you, he said. Isn't it? The phone rang again. The gunman answered. Agent Webb's voice was different now. More urgent? Let me speak to Sarah Mitchell. The room went silent. The gunman's eyes widened. He looked at Sarah. They know your name. It's a small hospital, Sarah said. They probably have a staff list. No. The gunman put the phone on speaker. Agent Webb, why do you want to speak to her specifically? There was a pause. Then, just put her on. The gunman held the phone toward Sarah. She took it. This is Sarah Mitchell, she said calmly. Colonel Agent Webb said quietly, we need to extract you now. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Colonel Dr. Harrison's face went pale. Jennifer stopped crying. Maria's mouth fell open. The lead gunman grabbed the phone back. What did he just call her? But Sarah had already moved. In one fluid motion, she disarmed the closest gunman. His weapon clattered to the floor. She swept his legs, and he went down hard. The lead gunman spun toward her, weapon rising. Sarah had already closed the distance. Her hand struck his wrist. The weapon discharged into the ceiling, plaster rained down. She twisted his arm behind his back. Forcing him to his knees, the entire sequence took 3 seconds. Everyone stay calm, Sarah said quietly. Her voice was different now, commanding, authoritative. The voice of someone who had given orders in places far more dangerous than this. The remaining 3 gunmen froze. Their weapons were raised, but confusion painted their faces. The small, quiet nurse had just disarmed their leader in seconds. Lower your weapons, Sarah said. Her voice was steady, calm, but there was steel underneath. Shooter. The lead gunman grunted from the floor. Nobody moved. Sarah's eyes scanned each gunman, reading them, assessing. You're not killers. You're soldiers. Probably discharged. Maybe dishonorably. You took this job for money? One of the gunmen shifted uncomfortably. But you have rules, Sarah continued. You don't shoot unarmed medical personnel. It's not in your training. The youngest gunman lowered his weapon slightly. How do you know that? Because I train people like you. The words settled over the room like snow. Dr. Harrison found his voice. What? What are you? Sarah ignored him. She looked at the lead gunman still on his knees. Your operation was compromised from the start. Your patient is a federal informant. This whole thing is a trap. The gunman's eyes widened. That's impossible. The FBI knew exactly where you'd go. They let you get here. They wanted you contained. Sarah's grip tightened on his arm. And they were monitoring me to make sure you didn't actually hurt anyone. The phone on the floor crackled. Agent Webb's voice emerged. Colonel Mitchell is correct. Stand down and you'll face trafficking charges. Keep fighting and we add murder to the list. The youngest gunman lowered his weapon completely. I didn't sign up for this, Marco. Don't, the lead gunman warned. But Marco was backing toward the wall. His weapon hit the floor. Smart choice, Sarah said. The other two gunmen exchanged glances. They were calculating. Weighing their options, Sarah released the lead gunman and stood. She kicked his weapon away. It's over. You know it. We still have hostages, he spat. You have scared civilians and one very annoyed Marine Corps colonel, Sarah corrected. Not the same thing. Jennifer's voice came out as a squeak. Marine Corps. Sarah finally looked at the nurses and doctors huddled against the wall. For a moment, something soft crossed her face, almost apologetic. I'm sorry you had to see this, she said quietly. Dr. Harrison was shaking his head. This is insane. You're a nurse. I've seen your file. You went to community college. You have student loans? I do have student loans, Sarah confirmed. Nursing school wasn't cheap, but you're also a colonel. I'm also a colonel, Maria spoke up, her voice trembling. How is that possible? Sarah glanced at the remaining armed gunmen. They hadn't lowered their weapons yet. That's a conversation for later. Right now, we need to end this peacefully. The lead gunman slowly stood. Blood trickled from his split lip. You think you've won? I think nobody else needs to die today. There are 5 of us. 1 of you. Sarah's expression didn't change. Are you sure about that? The gunman's radio crackled. Voices shouted. Sounds of struggle. The 2 you posted at the doors, Sarah said calmly. They're already in custody. The gunman's face went white. FBI Tactical entered through the roof access, Sarah continued. They've been in position for 8 minutes. The only reason they haven't breached this room is because I asked them to wait. The youngest gunman, Marco, slid down the wall into a sitting position. We're done. The other 2 exchanged looks. One of them lowered his weapon. Then the other. Only the lead gunman remained defiant. His weapon still pointed at Sarah. You're lying, he said. Check your radio. He did. Static. Then a new voice. Hostage takers inside the operating room. This is FBI hostage rescue team. You are surrounded. Weapons on the ground. Hands visible. The lead gunman's hand trembled. Rage and defeat warred on his face. Don't, Sarah said softly. You're young. Maybe you made bad choices, but you can still walk out of here. I'll spend 20 years in prison, better than dead. The silence stretched. The only sound was the beeping of the patient's heart monitor. Steady now. Alive. Finally, the weapon lowered. It clattered to the tile floor. The door exploded inward. FBI tactical agents in full gear flooded the room. Black uniforms, helmets, rifles raised. Everyone down. Down, down. The gunmen were thrown to the floor. Zip ties secured their wrists. The agents moved with practiced efficiency. Dr. Harrison and the nurses were pulled to safety. Jennifer was sobbing with relief. Maria was thanking God. One agent approached Sarah. Colonel Mitchell. Are you injured? I'm fine. We need to get you out of here, ma'am. Sarah looked at the patient on the operating table. He needs to be transferred to a trauma center. The surgery is complete, but he needs monitoring. Already arranged, ma'am. Another agent spoke into his radio. Package is secure. Repeat, package is secure. Sarah pulled off her surgical cap. Her ponytail had come loose during the struggle. She looked exhausted, but there was something else in her eyes now. Something that hadn't been there before. Authority, command, power. Dr. Harrison was being escorted past her. He stopped, stared. I don't understand any of this. I know, Sarah said gently. You saved that man's life. You saved all of us. Just doing my job. Which job? Harrison asked. Nurse or colonel? Sarah almost smiled. Both. The FBI agents were clearing the room. The gunmen were being led away. The patient was being prepped for transport. Agent Webb entered. He was tall, mid-40s, with gray at his temples. He extended his hand. Colonel Mitchell, good to see you in one piece. Sarah shook his hand. Your timing could have been better. We were 30 seconds from breaching when you took control. He glanced at the disarmed gunmen being led out. Impressive. They were scared kids playing soldier. Scared kids with automatic weapons. Agent Webb's expression grew serious. We need to debrief. There are questions about how your cover was compromised? Later, Sarah said. She looked at the nurses huddled with victim advocates. At Dr. Harrison being checked for injuries. They need to process what happened. Understood. Agent Webb lowered his voice. But you should know. The director is here. Sarah's eyebrows rose. FBI director. And others. This situation drew attention from very high places. He paused. They're waiting outside. Sarah took a breath. She looked down at her scrubs. Covered in blood, torn at the sleeve. Her hands were still shaking slightly from adrenaline. She had been invisible for 6 months. Hiding in plain sight, playing the role of the meek, forgettable nurse. That invisibility was about to end spectacularly. Let me clean up first, she said. Agent Webb nodded. 5 minutes. Then we need you outside. He left. Sarah stood alone in the operating room. The smell of blood and disinfectant. The sound of boots in the hallway. She looked at her reflection in the surgical light. The nurse. The colonel. 2 parts of one person. She had joined the hospital as part of a protection detail. A federal witness lived nearby. Sarah was supposed to keep watch. Stay close. She never expected armed men to storm her workplace, but she had handled it. The way she always did. With calm, precision, control. Sarah washed her hands, changed into clean scrubs from the supply closet, pulled her hair back into a neat ponytail, one last moment as the invisible nurse. Then she walked toward the exit, toward the waiting officials, toward the revelation that would change everything. The automatic doors opened, and Sarah Mitchell stepped into the light. The parking lot was chaos. Police cars, FBI vehicles, SWAT vans, ambulances, news helicopters circled overhead like vultures. Portable lights had been set up, turning night into day. The glare was blinding. Sarah stepped through the door. Immediately, agents moved to flank her. Creating a protective corridor, hospital staff who had been evacuated earlier stood behind barriers. She could see them pointing, whispering, phones recording. Jennifer was wrapped in a blanket, being treated by paramedics. When she saw Sarah emerge, she gasped. That's her, Jennifer said to the paramedic. That's the nurse who saved us. Dr. Harrison stood with the trauma counselor. His eyes tracked Sarah's movement across the parking lot. I don't understand, he kept repeating. I don't understand. Sarah walked forward. The agents guided her toward a cluster of black SUVs parked near the command post. A mobile command center had been erected. Banks of monitors, radio equipment, tactical maps, and standing in front of it, a group of people in suits. Sarah recognized the FBI director immediately. Rachel Stokes, 58, 25 years with the Bureau. Her face had been on the news 100 times. Next to her stood a 4-star Marine general, Frank Morrison. Sarah knew him. Had served under his command in Afghanistan? There were others. A woman with State Department credentials? Two men who had the look of intelligence agencies. They were waiting for her. Agent Webb spoke quietly as they approached. A bit of a welcoming committee. I see that, Sarah murmured. They reached the group. Sarah came to attention automatically. Military bearing replacing the nurse's hunched shoulders, General Morrison stepped forward. His weathered face broke into a slight smile, and then he saluted. The other officials followed suit. The FBI director, the State Department representative, even the intelligence officers. Sarah returned the salute crisply. Behind the barriers, hospital staff gasped. Dr. Harrison's mouth fell open. Colonel Mitchell, General Morrison said formally. Good work in there, thank you, sir. We are monitoring the situation. I understand you performed field surgery under duress. The patient was critical. Someone had to act. Morrison nodded. That's the Sarah Mitchell I remember. Always acting when others freeze. FBI Director Stokes stepped forward. Colonel, we have much to discuss regarding the compromise of your cover. But first, are you injured? No, ma'am. And the hostages, shaken. But physically unharmed? Stokes nodded. Thanks to your intervention. The tactical team reported you had already disarmed the primary threat before they breached. Sarah's expression remained neutral. I did what was necessary. One of the intelligence officers spoke up. The lead hostage taker is claiming you identified their operation as a federal setup. How did you know? The timing was wrong, Sarah explained. They moved too fast after taking the hospital. Professional operators would have secured better perimeter control. They were panicked, acting on incomplete intelligence. And Agent Webb's response was too quick. That meant federal surveillance was already in place. You deduced all of that while performing surgery, the officer said. It wasn't a question. Multitasking is part of the job. General Morrison chuckled. Colonel Mitchell has a talent for understatement. What she's not mentioning is that she's trained half our special operations medical personnel. She's conducted surgeries in field hospitals under rocket attack. She's extracted wounded soldiers from behind enemy lines. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. Sir, that's classified. What? Not anymore, Morrison said. Your cover is blown. The whole world is about to know exactly who you are. He gestured toward the barriers. News cameras were focused on them. Reporters shouting questions. Hospital staff stood frozen, watching, trying to comprehend. The State Department representative spoke for the first time. We need to address the diplomatic implications. You were operating under civilian cover on domestic soil. Part of an authorized protection detail, Sarah replied. All proper protocols were followed. Nevertheless, questions will be asked. FBI Director Stokes cut in. Those questions can wait. Right now, we need to debrief Colonel Mitchell and secure the scene. She looked at Sarah. You understand? You can't return to that hospital.
Ow.
Sarah nodded. She had known that the moment the word colonel had been spoken over the phone, 6 months of building trust, of being the quiet, reliable nurse, of invisibility, gone in an instant. I understand, ma'am. We'll arrange quarters for you until reassignment. Thank you. General Morrison placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. You did good work here. Saved lives. Civilian and military. He lowered his voice. But I need to ask, are you all right? It was the first time anyone had asked that question. Sarah met his eyes. For just a moment, the mask slipped. The exhaustion showed through. I will be, sir. Morrison squeezed her shoulder, then stepped back. Dismissed, Colonel. Get some rest. We'll reconvene in the morning. Sarah saluted again, then turned to go. But a voice called out from the barriers. Dr. Harrison pushed past the police line. Officers moved to stop him, but FBI Director Stokes held up a hand. Let him through. Harrison approached slowly. He looked at Sarah like she was a stranger, which, in many ways, she was. I need to understand, Harrison said. How long have you been lying to us? Sarah's expression softened. I wasn't lying, doctor. I am a registered nurse. I did go to nursing school. Everything on my application was true.
Oh.
But you're also a colonel. In the Marines? Yes. Why? Harrison's voice cracked. Why work in our Why pretend to be ordinary? Sarah glanced at the officials behind her, then back at Harrison. I was protecting someone. A witness in a federal case? They lived near the hospital. I took the position to maintain surveillance. For 6 months? For as long as necessary. Harrison shook his head. I treated you like you were nothing. Like you were incompetent. I know. And you just took it? Sarah almost smiled. Doctor, I've had drill sergeants scream in my face. I've had commanding officers question my every decision. Your coffee orders were easy. Despite everything, Harrison let out a shocked laugh. Then his face grew serious. You saved my life tonight. You saved all of us. Just doing my job. Which job? Harrison asked. The same question he'd asked hours earlier. This time, Sarah had a different answer. Both. I'm a nurse because I want to help people. I'm a Marine because I want to protect them. Tonight, I gotta do both. Harrison extended his hand. Sarah shook it. Thank you, he said quietly, and I'm sorry. For how I treated you? Apology accepted, Doctor. Harrison returned to the barriers. Maria and Jennifer were there, both staring at Sarah with wide eyes. Sarah gave them a small nod. A final acknowledgement. Then she turned and walked toward the waiting SUV. Agent Webb opened the door for her. Media is going to have a field day with this, I know. Humble nurse, secretly elite Marine colonel. It's like a movie. Sarah slid into the vehicle. Let's hope it has a happy ending. The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the scene. Through the tinted window, Sarah watched the hospital recede. The place she had worked for 6 months, the place where she had been invisible. She would never be invisible again. But as the exhaustion finally caught up with her, Sarah realized something. She was okay with that. The SUV drove through the night, toward whatever came next. Behind them, the hospital blazed with lights. A crime scene. A news story. A moment that would be analyzed and discussed for weeks. But for Sarah Mitchell, it was something simpler. It was the night she stopped hiding. 3 days later, Sarah stood in the lobby of County General Hospital. She wore her Marine Corps dress uniform, the blue fabric crisp, medals on her chest, colonel's insignia on her shoulders. She looked like a different person, but she wasn't. She was the same woman who had checked vitals and fetched coffee and saved lives. Just visible now. The hospital administrator, Mrs. Chen, approached nervously. Colonel Mitchell. Thank you for coming. You asked me to speak with the staff. Yes, they have questions. They're struggling to understand what happened. Mrs. Chen hesitated. Frankly, so am I. Sarah nodded. I'll do my best to help. They walked through the corridors. Staff members stopped and stared. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered behind their hands. The small conference room was packed. Nurses, doctors, technicians, people. Sarah had worked beside for months. Jennifer sat in the front row. Maria beside her. Dr. Harrison stood near the back. Sarah entered. The room fell silent. She stood at the front. Hands clasped behind her back. Military posture. Thank you for meeting with me, she began. I know the last few days have been difficult. What you experienced was traumatic. What you learned about me was confusing. Jennifer raised her hand timidly. Can I ask a question? Of course, were you ever really our friend? Or was it all just an act? The hurt in Jennifer's voice was palpable. Sarah's expression softened. Everything I told you was true. My mom does make terrible casseroles. I do hate driving in snow. I really did cry watching that patient's reunion with his daughter. But you lied about who you were, Jennifer said. I omitted parts of my identity, Sarah corrected gently. I am a nurse. That's not a lie. But I'm also a Marine. Those two things coexist, the young doctor spoke up. Why nursing? If you're this decorated military officer, why work here? Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. I joined the Marines at 18. Served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Other places I can't discuss. I saw terrible things. I did terrible things. The room was utterly silent. When I came back, I needed to do something that healed instead of hurt. So, I went to nursing school. Learned to save lives instead of take them. Maria wiped tears from her eyes. But you're still in the military, Reserve Sarah explained. Most of the time, I work as a civilian nurse. But when the military needs my specific skill set, they call me back. She looked around the room. 6 months ago, they needed me here. To protect a witness, to blend in, to watch. Dr. Harrison stepped forward. You could have told us. After the siege ended, you could have said something. Would you have believed me? Sarah asked. Harrison opened his mouth, closed it. Probably not. The Marines taught me that sometimes the best way to protect people is to stay in the shadows. Let them underestimate you. Slight smile. Though I admit the coffee runs were getting old, few people laughed. The tension in the room eased slightly. An older nurse named Patricia raised her hand. I have a question, and I mean no disrespect. Go ahead. Why stay? When Dr. Harrison was cruel to you, when Dr. Chen forgot your name, when we all treated you like you were less than, the question hung in the air. Sarah was quiet for a moment, because that's what the mission required, and because I've been treated far worse in far more dangerous places. A few thoughtless comments from tired doctors. She shrugged. I've survived worse. Dr. Harrison's face reddened. I'm sorry, truly. I was arrogant and dismissive and human. Sarah interrupted. You were stressed, overworked. You made assumptions. I forgive you. Harrison's eyes glistened. He nodded, unable to speak. The door opened. General Morrison entered, followed by FBI Director Stokes. The hospital staff jumped to their feet. Sarah came to attention. Morrison waved them down. Please, sit. I apologize for the interruption, but I wanted to address you all personally. He moved to stand beside Sarah. Colonel Mitchell is one of the finest officers I've had the privilege to serve with. She's completed 3 combat tours, trained hundreds of medical personnel, saved countless lives. He paused. And for the last 6 months, she's been doing the same work here, in this hospital. With you, Director Stokes stepped forward. The FBI thanks her for her service during the hostage crisis. Her actions prevented casualties and led to the peaceful resolution of a dangerous situation. But more than that, Morrison continued, she showed you something important. Heroism doesn't always look like you expect. It doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears scrubs and pulls double shifts and gets you coffee. He looked at Sarah with obvious respect. Colonel Mitchell embodied the values of service every single day she was here. Whether anyone recognized it or not, he stepped back. Then, once again, General Frank Morrison saluted Sarah Mitchell. Director Stokes followed. Then every military veteran in the room. Then, slowly, others joined, doctors, nurses, staff, not a military salute, but a gesture of respect, of recognition, of apology. Sarah returned the salute, her eyes bright. When hands lowered, Jennifer stood. Can I say something? Morrison nodded. Jennifer looked at Sarah. I was scared that night. So scared I couldn't function. But you stayed calm? You saved that man's life even with a gun to your head. You protected all of us. Her voice broke. You're the bravest person I've ever met. Maria stood too. And you were kind, even when people were cruel to you. That takes strength too. By one, the staff stood, sharing stories, thanking her, apologizing. Dr. Harrison was the last. I learned something, he said quietly. I learned that I don't know everything. That greatness can come in forms I never expected. That I need to treat everyone with respect, because you never know who might be standing next to you. Sarah smiled. That's a good lesson, Doctor. The meeting ended. Staff members approached Sarah individually, shaking her hand, taking photos, asking questions about her service. Finally, the room cleared. Only General Morrison remained. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Sarah let out a long breath. "It's surreal. For months, I was nobody. Now everyone wants to know my story. It's a good story. It's a complicated story," Morrison chuckled. "The best ones always are." He grew serious. "We have your next assignment ready. If you're interested, what is it?" "Teaching position. Marine Corps University. Training the next generation of combat medics and medical officers." "You'd be excellent at it," Sarah considered. "Would I get to do clinical work too?" "We could arrange rotations at military hospitals. Best of both worlds." Sarah looked around the conference room, at the empty chairs, at the place where she had been invisible for so long. "I'd like that," she said. Morrison extended his hand. Sarah shook it. "Congratulations, Colonel. You've earned it." He left. Sarah stood alone in the quiet room. Through the window, she could see the emergency room. Patients coming and going. Nurses rushing between rooms. Doctors barking orders. It continued. The rhythm of a hospital. Of saving lives. Of service. Sarah had been part of that rhythm. Would be again. Someday she straightened her uniform. Adjusted her cover. Prepared to leave. But first, she walked to the ER. One last time, Jennifer saw her coming. Colonel Mitchell. "Just Sarah," Sarah said gently. Jennifer hugged her. "Thank you. For everything." Maria joined them. Then other nurses. A moment of connection, of sisterhood. Dr. Harrison approached. He extended his hand formally. "It's been an honor, Colonel." Sarah shook it. "Take care of them, Doctor. They're good people."
"I will."
"I promise." Sarah walked toward the exit. Past the nurses' station, where she'd filled out charts. Past the supply closet, where she'd reorganized inventory. Past the break room, where she'd eaten countless lunches alone. She paused at the automatic doors. Looked back one last time. The ER was busy, chaotic, beautiful in its own way. The doors opened. Sarah stepped through. Outside, a Marine Corps vehicle waited. Her new life. Her visible life. But she would always carry this place with her. The hospital where she learned that invisibility and importance were not the same thing. Where she learned that serving quietly was still serving. Where she learned that heroism came in many forms. Sarah climbed into the vehicle. The driver nodded respectfully. "Where to, Colonel?" Sarah smiled. "Forward. Always forward." The vehicle pulled away. County General Hospital disappeared behind them, but Sarah. Mitchell's story was far from over. It was just beginning, and somewhere in another city, another hospital, another quiet professional was probably doing the same thing Sarah had done. Serving, protecting, saving lives. Invisible. To the world, but never invisible to the people who mattered. The people who needed them most. The silent badge bearers. The unsung heroes. The ones who wore scrubs and carried secrets. They were everywhere. You just had to know how to see them.